Good evening and welcome to Plain Talk. My name is Christopher Ram, your host, and for the next 50 minutes, we do apologize for the late start. We shall have to conclude at 9 o'clock when death announcement on this station begins. On Plain Talk this evening, as you would have seen from the screen, we having the President of Transparency Institute Guyana Inc., Dr. Troy Thomas, visiting with us, and he'll be telling us about a transparency outreach the Transparency Institute will be conducting. In fact, my information that it has already begun. But Troy, let me welcome you again to Plain Talk, and you will do much of the talking this evening.
Thank you, Chris. I'm beginning to feel like a regular on the program now.
First of all, Plain Talk extends to you, Dr. Thomas, and the Transparency Institute best wishes. I know it's a challenging job, getting people to turn out, getting committees to work.
Yeah.
Those are not easy tasks, and I think it's true to say that when you're president, you have to carry much of the workload.
Perhaps that's true, but I still have some, I have supportive people in the organization. By and large, you're not going to get everybody working on everything, but the support that we have for initiatives is good enough for us to get ahead with it. We have people give ideological support, but when it comes to finding the time and putting the effort in, of course, people have other commitments, so that's always competing with the time that we have for work transparency. But it's been okay so far, I think.
Well, that's a great spirit, That's a great attitude. No complaint. Get on with the job.
Exactly.
How has 2016 been for Transparency Institute?
2016 has been, I would say, trying to some extent, but we've also had some successes within the year. Trying in the sense, I think the first episode of the program that you invited me on, we spoke about funding, keeping the doors open, and so forth. We still have many of those issues. Sometimes it feels like we have to think about where we're going to get the next bit of income from, and that can distract from your efforts towards work in development and promoting initiatives. So we have had some of that, but we've also been able to do a few things. We went to Borbees to talk to people at the Tain campus, which was one of the things that a strategic initiative to reach out to people outside of Georgetown, because we're centered here, and try to get those people involved as well, because transparency, accountability, and anti-corruption are not only things for the city, it's for the entire country. So I'm happy that we were able to do that. But now we want to push forward and do something a bit more formal and institutional within the regions.
And how would you say the year has been for Guyana, given the factors that the Transparency Institute would use for judging? And I know the Corruption Perception Index will be coming out later this month. We don't necessarily want to preempt it.
Yeah.
But what's your gut feeling? What's the feeling of Transparency Institute as to how the country has performed?
I think it was a roller coaster ride over the year. You had a change in government just the previous year, so people are very optimistic. And in fact, in Latin America, there's research to suggest that a period following a change in regime, which will be a change, I assume, a change in the party and government, it comes with a feeling of goodwill, and people are optimistic about it. And within about 2 years, it sort of dissipates, and that's throughout Latin America. we have this situation in Guyana where around about a year and a half we started to see signs of those things happening. So I think it came a little bit early, and that's why I say it's a roller coaster ride, because we're optimistic about, especially given the things that were said on the campaign, and when it came down to it, some of the important issues have not been dealt with, or not been dealt with in the way that I think the citizenry would have.
You want to mention some of those?
Anticipating. For instance, we still have a code of conduct for ministers outstanding. And that's an important piece of document, if it is ratified, that lifts the standard, or at least gives you a benchmark by which you can judge the operations of the ministers and other government officials. So, but without it, we can refer to it, but it's not binding. And that was one of the things that was promised. So, from looking at the perspective of structural issues, putting systems in place for you to hold government more accountable, that's, I think, one of the failures.
Any other examples you could cite?
You have other issues that that were tinged by corruption, if we say that plainly. And the major issue, there are other rumblings, but the major issue, I think, would be the storage bond issue, which seem pretty clear, where the cabinet committee even said it was an inappropriate deal. So at least from the perspective of those in government, they recognized that it was inappropriate. But given what we came to understand, or what we would have believed about the coalition while they were campaigning, that's one of the issues they should have dealt with swiftly. And by not dealing with it in an appropriate manner, I mean, you had the minister apologize, and we still don't know the identities of the architects of the deal. Basically, it was nobody was sanctioned as a result of.
The minister has been removed from that ministry.
I don't know if that's as a result of this. If that's the case, then they should say plainly that we did this because of that, and then we know something was done specifically about that issue. Because it was not dealt with directly and swiftly, as we would have come to expect of the coalition government, I think people started to waver in their belief in how well they were going to implement what they said they would implement. So you also had when the government got into power, you saw the police force started to solve crimes, even old cases started to be solved, and people, I think, were like, wow, this is happening all of a sudden. So that was one of the moments when you felt elated a bit. And then you had moments like the storage bond deal and a few other things. So you had sort of a bumpy ride. And at the end of it, I think the government came out looking not so great, because if you're going to address corruption and accountability, I think you got to be very careful about how you proceed, and especially when it's in your own ranks. If you can't deal with it in your own ranks, then how can you tell me about how you're going to deal with it when it's somebody else?
Should the government be given credit for moving Dr. Norton? They haven't said why he's moved, but and I asked that question against the background and backdrop that the storage bond is still, the contract is still subsists.
Yes.
So how do you interpret that? The combination, the two issues.
It's difficult to. I mean, if you're sanctioning the minister for the deal, and have the deal still alive, then I think it's not. Whatever action you're taking is not complete. It's not complete. So I'm not sure that the action of moving the minister is as a result of that particular deal. If it is, then the government should tell us plainly, so that we can link. And also, so the population gets to see that, okay, you do this, this is the consequence. If we can link that, then it makes more sense. At the moment, we speculate a bit about why it is and so forth.
putting aside 2016, how does how do the directors of Transparency Institute see as they from this position and looking down 2017?
In terms of, what we see in the general context, how things will proceed, it's still, I think, there's still uncertainty about what might happen. There's still a lot, I think, that we would expect to be done. Mainly putting in place structures to arrest certain issues. I mentioned the Code of Conduct for Ministers.
The Integrity Commission is not.
Yeah, you have that. You have you've had rumblings about constitutional reform, and I'm not sure how those things are going to unfold, but those are important issues going ahead.
Again, we had a matter that's close to the heart and door of Transparency Institute, the question of the Access to Information Act and the Commissioner of Information.
Yeah.
Did it give you any satisfaction to see that the Prime Minister publicly chide the Commissioner of Information for his failure to prepare any report?
I would say yes, but that's one view of the issue. There is a deeper issue involved, and TIGI had done a column in the Stabroek News about it, where we spoke about defining transparency and accountability, and we did that because sometimes the terms get used and you're not sure what really people mean. Mm-hmm. You can't be talking about being transparent when it's question and answer time. You got to be transparent before question and answer time. Mm-hmm. Transparency gives the people a chance to monitor and arrest things as they're happening. If you're talking about question and answer, that's accountability time, and you're trying to reconstruct what happened. So, in a sense, there wasn't transparency because we wouldn't have to ask some basic questions. And then we went on to access to information, because access to information is crucial to transparency and accountability. And what we found is that the Access to Information Act was so designed that you can conceal information. It empowers you to conceal information just by defining it in a certain way, and you can define and redefine. The only thing that the Act guarantees is that you can apply. That's the only thing that it guarantees. In fact, it doesn't seem like it guarantees a response, because we asked specifically for the contract for the parking meters in Georgetown, and we did not even get a response.
Well, you notice now the Commission of Information has sued the government.
Oh, yes, I saw that.
That must be pretty depressing.
Yeah.
This is the person who is the center of access to information. And the person is now in conflict, legal dispute with the government, and saying, look, I don't have resources to work with.
Yeah. Well, the Act specifically says that the commissioner can refuse a request if the commissioner doesn't have the resources to do the job. But it doesn't define those resources and say how you decide whether you have the resources or not. Except
the definition would, in the absence of a definition, you would expect it's reasonable.
Yes.
There is a place.
It needs an office.
You need an office with common facilities, like a landline, maybe a cell phone, a computer, filing cabinets.
That would be expected,
information, internet access. So the framework is not there. The Minister of Information, who is the Prime Minister, was saying publicly that the commission, he doesn't know what the Commission of Insurance is doing because he hasn't prepared a report. The Commission of Information said, but look, the Prime Minister doesn't know what he's talking because I don't have to do such a thing.
Yeah, they are.
Is this a masquerade?
There's definitely, I think there has to be some kind of coordination where you feel with what is coming to light, there's a pulling and tugging. The Prime Minister is saying one thing, and it's important for the Prime Minister to come out and say if the Commission of Information is not honoring the obligations. But then you have the Commission of Information rebutting, and he's also identifying things that are important, like the office space and so forth. I think they got to resolve those issues.
But it's almost schoolboyish.
Yeah.
But surely, if we want to elevate it now to a serious discussion, if you're the responsible minister, you've got someone who hasn't done or who has not been doing his work. What do? Do you go public 20 months after and say, look, I haven't got it, I don't know what he's been doing? Or you call him in and say, look, we have some issues that we need to resolve. We have the public out there, we have we have taxpayers' money involved, their expectations, there's legislation.
I think, we probably should know about that when they have exhausted the internal channels to try and get those things resolved, because it's not going to get resolved in the public domain like that. Yeah, that's right.
But you raise the issue of the act. Now, several years ago, when the act was first passed, Transparency Institute, and I was pretty close to the organization then, as I still am now. We had made a number of recommendations to the PPPC government. I recall being chastised then. Why would it not be useful for Transparency Institute to say, I think you've come out calling for the scrapping of that?
Yes.
But then scrap and leaving what?
It's because the basis of it seemed to be to conceal information rather than make information available. I think the changes that you'll need to make to the act would be quite substantial.
Well, but that's not unusual, though, Dr. Thomas. You have repeal and replace very often, and I'm not talking Donald Trump, that idiot's type of thing. I'm talking about if you have a piece of legislation, and look, this country had clamored for access to information. In fact, I think we didn't only want access to information, we wanted a right to information act.
Freedom of information.
Or freedom of information, because that's what the Constitution guarantees anyway. So shouldn't Transparency Institute and its supporters sit down, work on a piece of legislation, and Article 19, the organization out in Europe. You've got models. You've got Trinidad model. You've got lots of models, access to information or freedom information legislation. But to me, to say scrap it is throwing the baby out with the bathwater, isn't it?
Well, I see where you're coming from with that. But as I mentioned, scrapping it would be because of the issues, the really deep issues that are involved. And we said scrap it or at least amend it.
Yes.
Because of course you can have that interpretation if you say scrap it. Now we need something on access to information or freedom of information.
Absolutely.
But what we have, I think, is so flawed that if you got to start, where do you start amending that? I guess that's one for the legal minds. And but not only legal minds, because all citizens should be able to have a say in even things concerning legislation. Sometimes we leave these up to the legal people, and that's what we get.
Confusion. You call lawyers in, and you will get 15 different opinions. It's almost like economists when they have to tell you something. But some of the issues with the act, everything has to go through this one person.
Yeah.
You want something from somebody from region 10 wants some information, they've got to get it through.
Okay.
Now, so it's where the where the gravity is, where the center of gravity is,
Yeah.
and that can't be too difficult.
Yeah, but you know, it's from several angles. You have one, you gotta send everything to this individual or this office that will then contact the various organization. No,
And they say they want clarification.
there is one level here where you gotta basically jump through a hoop because this person, you're gonna have to assess whether they have the resources to do it, and not only that, the person is assessing as well whether providing the information will cause the organization to cause too much disruption in the work of the organization. And I don't know how you measure that. So if what you're asking for will unduly disrupt the functioning of the organization, it can be denied right here at the commissioner, at the level of the commissioner. When you send to the organization now, the organization can choose to categorize this in such a way that it's no longer available to the public. And there is no provision for reviewing that categorization or querying it or what's not, or disputing it. So you have, you go to that individual.
That's not necessarily so. The right of a citizen, the right of a person, and Transparency Institute is a recognized person in law,
Yeah.
can always, if they feel
Yeah.
that someone is acting unreasonably,
Yeah.
or then they can take that someone to court.
Yes, I was going to say that there is a provision actually to go to the Supreme Court.
Yes.
But that's the only thing that's stipulated there. The trouble with that is how many people will really be able to do that. So you have so many hoops to jump through, and then the mechanism by which you can get some kind of recourse, revision, or whatnot is out of the reach, I think, of most citizens.
But if you feel, sorry, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
If you feel passionately
Yeah.
about this information, and you know, I criticize the media.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get a call from the media asking you information, and I say, look, you know, there's an Access to Information Act. Have you ever used it?
Yeah.
So the other point is this, though, Dr. Thomas. If someone is being unreasonable in withholding information or not cooperating in providing information, one court case may help to set a precedent.
That's true. Yes. Yeah, I guess after that it can open up.
Because people realize, look, you can't this thing can't be taken lightly.
I get what you're saying. Somebody needs to do it.
And
Somebody needs to do it.
I hate saying this, and you know, I'm very sympathetic to non-governmental organizations with limited resources.
Yeah.
But who should do it? I think the media should be one of the first set of people, but certainly Transparency Institute. You know, you've taken a job. When I say you've taken a job, I mean Transparency Institute has taken this job. It is the civil society organization that is accredited for monitoring corruption, transparency, and accountability. To not do what it ought to do it sounds harsh, Troy.
No,
it's tantamount to shirking responsibility.
Well, that part is harsh, but but I see where you're coming from with it. I think what happens sometimes when we get maybe daunted by the structures in place, and what you're saying indeed is that we shouldn't allow that to happen. And because what also happens if you ask for a few things and you get treated that way, then after a while people don't have the confidence that they're going to get information if they ask, so that no longer becomes an option. But the commissioner could say, oh, I did not get any requests, ignoring completely that there is a perception that would have developed surrounding it that prevents people from trying to get it. Because if we continue to ask for information, we're basically just making the point that we've been asking. Because even while you're asking for it, you know you're not going to get it.
But once you do that, you also are saying you're sitting down and making recommendations on how to amend the legislation
Yeah.
or how to repeal and replace.
Yeah.
You know, one of the ways to do it, of course, is to say in every ministry you should have an information officer.
Yes. That sounds like
And the commissioner of information becomes more like a referee rather than a funnel or a conduit.
yeah.
And if you don't get the information, you go to that person.
Yeah. I think at the moment the organization can identify somebody. It
Yes.
doesn't state, like a designated post, but they can arbitrarily identify somebody who could refuse it.
But you still have to rely on the commissioner of
Yes.
information
Yeah, that's correct.
to go that roundabout way.
Yes. Yeah, that's correct. I don't, indeed, I think there are other models out there that we can look at and see how they do it. For instance, you have other levels to which you can appeal in, like the Freedom of Information Act in Trinidad. Is it Trinidad? I think there is an ombudsman. I think in Jamaica there might be another committee. I don't remember the name of it that you can appeal to before it goes to the level of the High Court.
Yes.
So you have some team of individuals there who can look at it and decide whether the refusal or what's not was reasonable.
Yes.
And if you're not happy with that, then you take it higher. In Guyana, we have a situation you got to go straight to the Supreme Court.
Yes.
So there are different models, and perhaps it's time to sit down and see what might be the best mix of things for us. But definitely what we have, as it is articulated, it does not guarantee that you get information.
You just mentioned, I don't, you mentioned the word or the term ombudsman.
Yeah.
Now, in some countries, you've got ombudsman, you've got a police ombudsman, you've got different types. You have a newspaper ombudsman, press ombudsman. But we have another problem. We don't have an ombudsman. He died a few months ago, and nothing has happened. Now, you have that problem, and you have legislation that is as backward as anything. The legislation is grossly outdated. Now, am I putting too much weight on Transparency Institute?
No, you see, it's what we decided to take on for society, and I think sometimes we need to be told if we are not aware of things or if we haven't been taking them up, we need to be told about it, and citizens should tell us about issues when we omit or neglect or overlook. And that kind of information is welcome.
This business, an ombudsman, if you have a proper, if the ombudsman legislation is so backward, it's backward in the sense of being outdated. It has very few, the jurisdiction of the ombudsman is severely limited. Again, somebody needs to do some work and go to the government or go to someone maybe in the opposition and say, look, could you please bring a member's bill to amend this? You have options.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
It's much easier. It's much easier to ask questions than to provide answers.
Yeah, I know that. I teach it. Yeah. I think, indeed, and I may not have all the answers to all of this. I represent the organization. Definitely, I don't see myself as the fount of knowledge or information. So the things that you're mentioning, I hope some of my colleagues are looking, and maybe we can discuss some of these issues and see whether we feel that they're relevant to us and how we might want to proceed.
I don't want to sound like I'm beating up on you or Transparency.
That's all right. My shoulders are strong, even though they look thin.
The Mahatma, Martin Luther King he was probably a little bit more size than certainly Mandela. So strength is not a physical mass. Yeah. It's something more internal. So I have no doubt. Let's be fair to our viewers. the program is about your outreach.
Yes.
So we finally get around to what it is about
Yeah.
tonight, Troy.
Well,
Tell us about this outreach.
the outreach is an attempt on our part to become more inclusive overall. We're centered in Georgetown, and a lot of times we get tunnel vision focusing on issues in the city and issues of central government, and we don't necessarily bring enough attention to what's going on within the regions.
Mm-hmm.
So the outreach program is intended to do that, and it's going to do that in a few ways. We want to involve the authorities within the regions. I mean, they are the people who are doing the planning and implementation there. So we want to discuss with them, make sure that they understand what the program is about. Then we want to meet with citizens and with the leaders in the region. We plan to have a workshop. They can talk about transparency, accountability, how citizens can get involved, what the local government authorities are doing to ensure transparency and accountability. So in a sense, we'll have citizens and we'll have the councillors there, and they'll be in a back and forth discussion. It's not a forum to deal with grievances,
Mm-hmm.
but to think about how we move forward, perhaps even setting priorities if it comes to that. But to sort of facilitate that discussion so that the people understand how they can get involved, what local government is doing for them, and what they need to be doing to ensure that they continue to get the best out of what local government is attempting to do.
Is it only about local government, or is it about corruption generally?
It is about transparency, accountability, and corruption, but we focus on local government.
Mm-hmm.
So in the first phase, we're going to region 3, 4, 6, and 10. It has to do with funding and what's not. We got to choose regions, and then later on, hopefully, we can expand beyond those regions.
None of these is a hinterland community.
Yes, you're very right about that. As soon as you leave the coast, your costs jump. It doesn't only raise a little; it just steps up.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas we might be able to do 2 or 3 regions on the coast, we might be able to do 1 in the hinterland, and then you start to think we discussed that issue at length, and we really wanted to go into the hinterland,
Mm-hmm.
but we decided to leave that for the second phase, and then maybe we might have to focus on 1 or 2 hinterland regions and then scale up from there. Now, apart from bringing councillors and people together and citizens together to discuss and plan and see how they can get involved, we have 2 other important components. One is we're going to collect data from citizens using a citizen scorecard, a survey basically,
Mm-hmm.
on transparency, accountability, and corruption in local government. So we'll recruit citizens following appropriate survey methodology, and we'll get an independent firm to do that for
Mhm.
us. We want to recruit individuals to be part of a panel, and it doesn't matter who you are. Once you're a citizen, we want to know what your view is,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to ask them to periodically log in and complete a questionnaire. We'll compile that and get an overview of transparency, accountability, and corruption, perceptions about these things within the local government areas. We can aggregate that and then get an overview for the country.
Mhm.
So ultimately we get to the level of the country, but we start from the bottom up in that case.
Mhm.
The other part is we're going to have a community monitors program where we're going to recruit individuals from within the regions
Mm-hmm.
to look around within the region and give us information on what is going on. What is going on that is good, what is going on that is not good, what is going on that might need some intervention. And in a sense, we bring mainstream attention to these issues. We're not only focusing on Georgetown anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Those individuals, apart from that, in the long term, what we want to do is to assign them to specific projects. So this is one of the things we're going to talk to the regional authorities about. What projects are coming on stream that we can assign people to monitor, to work
Mhm.
along. And
when we say projects, we mean the infrastructural projects,
yes,
for example,
they might
the road
be doing something like building a road,
Yes.
building a bridge or what's not. And from the community monitors that we recruit, we might assign somebody to this specific project, and they're just going to track the progress of it, how things are done, if it's transparent, and so forth, and do a report on that. So in a sense, we're getting citizens involved in ensuring that things go the way they're supposed to go.
But that model that you talk about there, Dr. Thomas, it does require the cooperation and the active cooperation of the authorities. Because
Yeah.
if I'm a citizen in region X
Yeah.
and I see a project going on, I wouldn't be able to critically evaluate that project
Yeah.
unless I've seen a contract
Yeah.
under which that project is being executed.
Yeah. Well, we want to start the process by talking with the regional authorities, get them to understand what we're trying to do, and get them to agree to have people. Well, initially, straight away, we're not going to get into that part of tracking the project because that's a more long-term goal. But we're going to start identifying projects that are good candidates for this kind of thing. That's from discussion with them. And then we'll have to discuss and see how we can get the monitors involved in it. So it will require their cooperation. And hopefully, with the workshop and so forth with the citizens, they can commit to these things.
Have you begun this as yet? Met any regional officer?
We're meeting the first region tomorrow.
Wow, this is good timing.
Right. We had some initial contact where we tried to set up the meeting, and they've been very receptive so far. I mean, our office assistant sent emails, and straight away we had responses leading to meeting dates and so forth. So that's positive. We're going to Region 3 tomorrow. Talk with the chairman about we give the chairman a rundown about the project, how they can get involved, what are the kinds of things we want to do, and try to get them to cooperate with us to get it done. You see, it's not a project for Transparency Institute, it's a project for the citizens. And we are just facilitating that interaction and putting some structure to it.
But if you see corruption in the place, you'll be
yes.
making songs.
Yes, that's the thing. That's what the authorities would have to understand, that we're going to check for transparency, accountability, and once they commit to it, right, then hopefully they follow through, because we'll be writing reports based on the information provided by the monitors, based on the information provided by the citizens in the survey. And at the moment, we plan to do it every 6 months. But in the first instance, we should have a report at the end of March. That would be the first iteration. And thereafter, we do it every 6 months. So you can track progress over time.
The project, you say over time. How long is this project scheduled to last?
Well, this initial phase, where we're going to have workshops and so forth, will be done within a 3-month period. We had initially wanted to do it within 6 months, but there's some issues there with the timing and finances and so forth. So we had to condense it into 3 months. In fact, we had to cut out some regions, and that's where we end up with Region 3, 4, 6, and 10. But we thought it important to make a start anyhow. So what we tried not to do is to scale back too much on the activities. We scale back on the regions with the understanding that we're going to do another phase sometime and implement all the activities. So in the short term, we'll be collecting information as it is on the ground. The scorecard initiative, we can get the first iteration of the survey done. We can get the initial bit of information from the monitors that are recruited, and that will now help us to write the report. Now, the other part of it, the next phase, and this will be beyond the project. This will be a more long-term issue.
Yes.
We'll have the monitors stay on, and we'll try to get them assigned to various projects and so forth, and then that can go on over time.
You have monitors for each of these regions?
Well, we don't have any on board at the moment. We're trying to recruit. So this is something I should say. Look out for our posters. Look out for our advertisements. We'll be indicating once we form up the dates with the regional authorities. We'll have the dates when the workshops will be there.
Yes.
Then we'll advertise for the monitors, recruit and train them and so forth, because we want people to conduct themselves properly when they go out there as well. So those things are coming up. You should pretty soon see an advertisement for a survey form to recruit the individuals within the regions to be part of the panel. We're also advertising for a manager for the community monitors. This will be somebody who will be at our office and liaising with the individuals we recruit in the region and combining the
This person you're recruiting in the region, are they volunteer or are they paid a stipend or?
Yes.
What's the arrangement?
In the initial part of the project, there will be volunteers. We're all volunteers. I am a volunteer at TIGI. But this initial...
Both by choice and by necessity.
Yes.
There's
but
no
this
money.
initial phase with the monitors, it will be more so looking at the current issues. This is not the part where they're monitoring the projects as yet, but we'll start identifying the candidate projects. I think when we assign to projects, because of the activities they'll have to do over time, we'll have to see whether we can put together some kind of a package for the individual, because that's a long-term thing and you're assigned to something and you got to deliver reports periodically. Now, that one, I think we'll need to provide some sort of an incentive or some kind of a compensation. But in this initial phase where we're trying to gather information, and it's the first time on what's going on in the regions, it would all be voluntary work. So we're looking for people who are also interested in transparency, accountability, and anti-corruption. But as always, our organization is not about political association or party association. It's everybody. Right? So as we come to the region, we don't want anybody to feel skeptical about issues like those. If you feel that you have something to contribute to transparency, accountability, and anti-corruption, you're a citizen, you're the person we want.
You mentioned from time to time it's long-term and second phase and so on. Is there any indication or information at this stage how long this project is going to last?
Well, as it is
What's the plan?
now, the initial phase would be for 3 months because of the reporting requirements. Now, the long-term part that I'm talking about, we hadn't discussed when it's going to come to an end. I think we are thinking it will go on and on and on. It will be, what we would like is for it to be one of those programs that is institutionalized within TIGI. We want to be collecting data every 6 months for as long as we can, for the next 20 years if possible. And then we can look back and see what track progress over time.
Yes.
Right? And so the initial phase, we'll have a survey form to recruit the people and we'll have a database and so forth. But after that, they will be filling in this form online. So we wouldn't have to go back in the field except if you have dropouts and you have to replace them. But the data after that will be collected online.
You mentioned, you said regions. Where does the Georgetown City Council, because you touched on the City Council this evening by saying that you'd requested information on the parking meter contract and you still haven't got it.
Yeah.
Is the Georgetown City Council involved in this project as well? Or is it a regional?
They should be. We contacted the regional offices. In Region 10, for instance, we had an interesting response. The regional office, they responded to say we should get the city involved in it. So
that's the Nendang Council?
Yes. So what they're advising us is to now don't only contact them, contact the other body as well. Right, and that's fine.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how it played out at Region 4, but I think we have a date already to meet Region 4. Yes, we're meeting Region 4 on the 26th. So, but different regions might take different paths to it. to some extent, we don't want to dictate. We put it out there and let the region advise us on how to proceed. Of course, we're gonna collaborate and discuss and see what is the best approach. But we don't want to dictate what happens up front.
We've got just 5 minutes more because we do have to stop at 9 o'clock. The issue of transparency and accountability in the extractive sector of an economy. If we think of oil, you hear of the millions and billions, we're not talking Ghana now, involved in corruption and who's selling this and which politician. Has Transparency Institute identified the extractive industries for some critical examination and analysis?
The extractive industry is indeed important. We had some time ago identified some sectors, forestry and so forth. They come under different umbrellas, but the extractive industry is definitely in there. We're seeing several initiatives. We've been invited to several forums, so launching of something or discussion of something or some putting together some committee and so forth. So you're getting a lot of buzz about it, and I think oil is probably driving it because of the fact that we're now getting into that. But it's definitely an important sector. Now, oil, a lot of money is involved. And when you have a lot of money involved, you have big potential for things to go wrong as well. So it is definitely one of the things we have to keep an eye
on. But it's not an immediate concern of Transparency Institute.
I might ask you to define immediate concern. It is a concern.
Immediate concern, not in a negative sense, but in a constructive sense. That look, we need to put mechanisms in place.
Well, we have not really moved definitively in a direction to do that. So perhaps that means we haven't treated it as an immediate concern. But we have been talking about it. And hopefully over time, not so long from now, we start to put some kind of thing in place, because it is new. Well, not the extractive industry, but oil in particular.
Yes.
So I think we got to try to think now, how do we address this particular issue, and perhaps look at how it's addressed elsewhere. There is also a scope for communicating with Berlin and other chapters of Transparency Transparency International to see how they have gone about it and how we can tackle the issue.
I'm sure we're going to be talking about that in the, if not weeks, the months to come. But very shortly, I do believe Transparency International will be issuing its Corruption Perception Index. What date is that?
It's the 25th of January. Yes, I think the 25th of January it should be coming out, which gives us another week. Another week from now. At the moment, they would be looking at making sure everything is in order. Any final corrections they gotta make, anything to address any issue here or there. But in another week, it will be official.
You're optimistic that Ghana will have moved the needle in the positive direction?
The last time you asked me, I was on the program, you asked me about that. And what I mentioned then is that when it comes to the perceptions, they don't change easily. You need to see
changes of government don't help to inform.
Not necessarily. You can have a period where people feel more optimistic, and if you were to survey directly in that period, it might pick it up. But if you're doing surveys as well, you will know not to survey in that period. you'll survey at a period when things have settled down a bit more, when you can get the more stable perceptions. And if that is the case, then we might not move at all. We might move a bit ahead. We might move back a little bit. But I don't think we can expect any major movement.
Even despite the change of government?
Yes, I don't think so.
Dr. Troy Thomas, I want to thank you very much for appearing on program again. You have the best wishes of Plain Talk for the success of this outreach program. It's a great initiative. It gets the persons outside of the city of Georgetown to feel that, look, we're not forsaken.
Yeah.
We're not some country cousins that are used only when it's convenient.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Thanks.
And I want to say to the operator and viewers, thank you, good night. Hopefully next week we'll be discussing the announcement that Guyana is to establish its own law school. So once again, thank you, good night, and see you next week.